What's up, y'all? So in this video I'm going to go over the proper operation of the SIG P250 pistol. So the first thing I want to talk about is how to clear the pistol. That's the first thing that you should be able to do. So most pistols will have the magazine in when you grab them or when you walk up to them. So to clear a pistol, the first step is to drop the magazine. You push on the magazine release button that's right here, and that will cause the magazine to just pop out. Now the second step to clearing a pistol is to pull back on the slide and to look inside here. That's the chamber that I pointed to earlier, to see if there's a round inside the chamber, and there's not. So you can release that, and now the pistol is clear. Okay. So let's talk about the operation and the buttons and switches on this pistol. So we already talked about this button right here. This is the magazine release. To insert a magazine, you just push it in until it clicks. Now it's properly seated. To release the magazine, you push the magazine release and it comes out. This button right here, this is a magazine catch, or excuse me, a slide catch. Okay. So to use this, you pull back on the slide and that locks it in the rearward position. Okay. That's one way of being able to check if the pistol is clear. If you're firing with this weapon and you run out of ammo, if you fire on an empty magazine, what will happen is the pistol will automatically lock back to the rear, like what just happened right there. This is a way of letting the user know that the pistol's out of ammunition. It automatically engages the slide catch right there. So this is convenient. We'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about employing the pistol in the proper mode of operation. Okay, so to release the slide catch, all you have to do is you can either push down, which will snap it forward, or to do it in a controlled fashion, you can just hold the slide and ride it forward. The last switch we'll talk about here is the takedown lever. This cannot be used when the slide is forward. It can only be used when the slide is in the rearward position. So you'll just lock the slide to the rear so that this notch lines up with the takedown lever. Maneuver it like that, and then this allows you to further disassemble the pistol, and we'll talk about this in another video. Okay. So we've talked about the three switches, and this last, of course, is the trigger. This particular pistol does not come with a safety. It is double action only. What that means is that the trigger raises the hammer and drops the hammer in one trigger pull. Two actions. Raises the hammer and drops the hammer. Okay? So we've cleared this pistol already, and I'll show you what I mean by this. If you look closely, when I pull the trigger, it raises the hammer and drops the hammer. That causes the gun to cycle, which fires around, and the rearward action of the recoil cocks it. However, it does not leave the hammer in the back position as most other pistols will. It leaves in the forward position, double action only. This results in a gun that has a more deliberate trigger pull. A lot of these pistols are sold to police and other agencies that use them as duty pistols, so that the officers or what have you are having to make a deliberate trigger pull every time they fire the weapon. This is so that if they're in like a very high stress situation with their finger on the trigger, they don't accidentally discharge the weapon. It requires a very deliberate trigger pull for you to fire the weapon. Okay. So we talked about the three switches and the trigger. It's got a little bit longer of a trigger pull, but it is in some ways safe to prevent an accidental discharge of the weapon. So when it comes to employing the weapon, we're going to pretend like this right now is well, let's just say, first of all, we're not going to pretend this is an empty magazine, which it is. If the magazine is out of the weapon and you decide and you clear the weapon so that there's no round in the chamber, you now know that the weapon is on green status. That is, there is no magazine in the magazine well. There's no round in the chamber. It is green. The second way that we could load this weapon would be called amber status, is what we used to say in the military, and that is let's say this is a loaded magazine, which it's not. We put a loaded magazine in the weapon, but there's no round in the chamber, so it is now amber. If I pull the trigger on an amber weapon, it would not fire. And then lastly is if we have a loaded magazine, which again this is not, but notionally let's say it is, we put it in the weapon and we cock the weapon. So that is to completely pull back the slide and then just release, not riding it forward, just letting it release. That lets the weapon take a round and load it into the chamber. Now it is on red status. That is, if you pull the trigger, it will fire. So we clear the weapon, no magazine, green status. So we have a loaded magazine in the well. That is amber status. That means it requires a racking of the slide to chamber around in order to fire. And then lastly is red status, which is you put a magazine in the magazine well and you rack the slide, and then it is ready to fire. That is red status. Again, this particular weapon does not have a safety. So those are the cycles of operation and the mode of employment of the SIG P250 pistol.